Hey guys, this is Monica Volkmar. I wanted to take some time today to share a concept with you for all the DIY movement detectives like me who are looking for ways to move better and feel better in their bodies. And I think this is a concept that is one of the most fundamental and basic, and yet at the same time the most highly advanced thing. So are you ready for it? If you're going to try to move a part of your body because you think it needs to move better or differently, make sure that that part of your body that you're trying to move is the actual thing that you're moving, and you're not just moving your whole body around that part thinking that you're moving that part of the body, but you're actually not. You're moving everything else. So if that sounded confusing, it kind of is to say, so I would like to illustrate it with a story from a client of mine that I was working with a few weeks ago. So this is a client that came to see me for Thai massage and some movement therapy. And he came in with an issue with his shoulder. So it was the up around here, the back of the shoulder blade, upper trap, levator, scapula sort of area that's pretty common. And he had consistent discomfort there for years and years and years. And I've known this guy for many, many years. So since as long as I've known him as a client, he's had this issue. And he's said, like, I've been to osteopaths and I've been to chiropractors and I've had deep tissue massage and I've had acupuncture, all the things. And I've had Thai massage from you. And like, why is this not changing? What's happening? So we looked at the position of his shoulder blade that it was in. And what it looked like was that if these are his two shoulder blades, it looked like this one, the one that was the shoulder that was bugging him, the shoulder blade was really protracted forwards. So really like this, spread forwards from the spine. So it was elongating all the muscles at the back there where he was having the experience of discomfort. And it was also really hypertrophied there, like the muscles themselves were really big and bulky. And so I was thinking, well, why would a muscle do that? Why would it get really big and developed if it's in a long, stretched out position? So the analogy I like to use, and this is going back into Gary Ward's first rule of motion, or is it the second one? I always forget if it's the first or the second, but muscles must lengthen before they contract, and joints act, muscles react. They're both very similar. And so if his shoulder blade was really protracted forwards, stretching out all the muscles that retract it, like the rhomboids, middle trapezius, his body would maybe be finding a strategy to constantly want to pull it back so it doesn't get away from him too far. So I like to think of it as a dog on a leash, and the scapula is the dog and the muscles back here are the leash. And so if his scapula is getting away from him, these muscles are getting really taut, like they're getting pulled really tight, which was his experience. He's like, oh, my shoulder's tight. Well, yeah, no shit, your shoulder's tight. It is. And so this shoulder, the muscles, the leash, were constantly getting yanked on, like trying to pull the shoulder blade back, pull it back. So you can think of it as many, many reps of retraction of the shoulder blade under tension, but never actually getting this area to shorten up sufficiently to let those muscles just chill out. So imagine 1,000 times a day pulling on that dog's leash. Like, you'd get kind of tired, the rope would get really taut, and the dog isn't really learning to do anything differently. You're just yanking on its leash. And that kind of feels like what was happening with his shoulder blade at the time. He was doing tons of reps of yanking on the leash, yanking it back, lots of tension, but not ever actually changing the position of his shoulder blade. And so what I offered to him was, well, let's see if we can actually change the position that your shoulder blade is in so that you don't have to constantly be yanking on that leash. And it's when those muscles are under load, like they're lengthened and they're working under that length. We call that an eccentric load, length tension. We're working under tension. And that often can cause muscle hypertrophy. So the reason why it was so bulky and developed back there was because it was working, and it was working in a very long position. So what we did with him is we tried to find an exercise or an experience where his scapula could actually get back from this forward position back to a little bit more center. So all we did, super simple exercise, was just a retraction of his shoulder blade. So I got him to take this part of your shoulder blade back here and simply bring it back towards your spine. And as simple as that sounds, it was the hardest thing for him to get his brain around, because he had many other strategies that he'd learned over the course of his life to accomplish the feeling of retracting that shoulder blade without actually even moving it. So the first strategy that he found was when he retracted his shoulder blade, he actually elevated it to bring it back. So he had this shrugging pattern, which is very common. A lot of people do this. I do this if I'm not really paying attention to it. And so what I did was, well, let's put a boundary there. If I put my finger on your shoulder, can you just purely find that retraction without an elevation? Because what we're looking for is pure retraction. That's the movement he's missing. He's got tons of ability to elevate. Can you retract without elevating? And no, he was just shrugging away. And when he finally found it without a shrug, he had found another solution. And it was going like this, bringing his arm behind him. And I was like, no, dude, that's also not a retraction. Like, yes, you're bringing your shoulder blade behind you, but you're doing it by moving your arm back, which won't actually retract the shoulder blade. It's really just going to tip your shoulder forwards like this, which if we're looking for this motion of the shoulder blade and you yank your arm back, you're really getting this motion of the shoulder blade. So it's not the same thing. That's more of an anterior tilt with the scapula versus a pure retraction with the scapula. So I was like, dude, nope, sorry, that's not the thing. So I put another barrier up. I put my hand behind his arm, and I still had my hand on his top of his shoulder. And with those walls in place, then I asked him, okay, now try to find that retraction. And you know what else he did? He found another strategy. He went like this. He just rotated and leaned his body to the right. And I was like, dude, I commend your efforts, but that's still not a retraction of your scapula. Yes, you're leaning and going back, and that's moving your shoulder blade back in the right direction, but it's not actually your scapula moving. You're just moving your body, and it feels like you're moving your scapula. So I had to put up another wall. I put one of my hands just behind his ribcage here and gave him a little nudge if he leaned into me. So now we had this three-dimensional container for him to try to find 1 millimeter of scapular retraction. And I think it was the most frustrating thing of his life, and I think he was starting to hate me a little bit. But honestly, like, I don't care if you hate me, because what we're here to do is help your body move differently. So sometimes you need to hate me a little bit. And he finally got it though. And he got these just a few millimeters of very pure retraction. And that's what really counts, is even if it's just a millimeter, but you're moving the body part you're actually trying to move, that's going to be so much more impactful and meaningful and beneficial for your body to have that movement back, whereas before you had none. Not only did you have none, but you had 3 other strategies to do that motion. And if every step you take, your shoulder blade must go through a full cycle of retraction and protraction, but every time that you do your retraction, it actually looks a little bit more like this, then that's going to cause a little bit more strain and inefficiency in your system, and potentially can lead to, in the case of my client, a little bit of discomfort in his shoulder. So what I want you to take away from this is to be really attentive when you're doing movements and exercises that you are using to change the way you move. Be really mindful of, are you actually moving the part of your body that you're trying to move? Or do you just think you're moving that part of your body, and yet instead you're moving other parts of your body around that one body part, making it feel like you're moving that one body part you're trying to move, but you're actually not. And sometimes it helps to have someone's helping hands to create barriers for you, but also getting in front of a mirror, filming yourself, can be really valuable as an experience. So what I offer to you is, would you like to try that experiment? Would you like to try scapular retraction and notice what are your strategies? Do you shrug? Do Do you move your shoulder blade by pulling your arm behind you? Do you do it by like hyperextending an elbow when you're trying to do it? Do you rotate your body? I've also seen this, do you excessively drag your shoulder blade down to try to bring it back? What I like to think about, the analogy I've been using lately, is like your shoulder blades are like doors, and you're just trying to open the door on its hinges. We don't want to bust the ceiling, we don't want to scrape the floor, we don't want to pull it off its hinges, we just want to open the doors, and very gently and very smoothly. So that's my invitation for you. Try that, see how it goes. Are you aware of what your strategies might be that are not pure retraction? And can you find a way to prevent yourself from doing all those additional strategies and just get to the truth of where are your shoulder blades and can you move them? And if you like this kind of stuff and you are interested in geeking out and learning more about your body and finding honest movement, not just your typical default movement strategies that you've developed over time due to injuries or habitual patterns from trained skills or just lots and lots of sitting all the time, maybe you'd like to participate in my upcoming Liberated Body workshop, which is a 4-day exploration of your body's bones and joints through the gait cycle, which is based on Gary Ward's Anatomy in Motion and his model of gait called the flow motion model. And this is the work that has been most impactful on my personal body. Whose body would it be? My personal body that has helped me to resolve a lot of my movement patterns, and I still use to resolve a lot of my wonky movement patterns because I'm not perfect, far from it. So if you enjoy this stuff, my movement workshop is 4 weeks, going from the feet through the spine, through the hips, into the shoulders and the neck, exploring what should your body be able to do based on how we walk, how we get one foot in front of the other. And so I invite you to check out information about that. If you're interested, you can see all the info at monicavolkmar.com/liberated-body-workshop. And give that retraction exercise a go. Can you do it? Let me know. I'd love to hear. You can write into the comments of this video or shoot me an email. And yeah, I'd love to hear how that goes for you. So that's it for today. I just wanted to share that concept with you. If you're going to move a body part, make sure you have some systems in place to help you feel if it's the actual body part that you're moving, or if you're finding all sorts of ways of moving everything else around that one body part. And this applies not just to the shoulder blades, but to every single bone and joint of our body. Okay, so I hope that was useful. Thanks for tuning in, and have a lovely day.